Colin and Shannon back with you. Shai Davidi is with us from Sportsnet as he gets set for spring training. I don't think you're going to be getting in shape to go to spring training, but you will be
Well, I
covering.
don't know. I don't know. Maybe Shai's, maybe there's something that's Shai's keeping a secret here.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to make a team if that's what you're asking, but I'm definitely trying to stay in shape because the tsunami is coming, and I better be ready for have my energy high all season long.
It is interesting. This team has had back-to-back 90-game winning seasons, and yet they've made fairly dramatic change. Certainly, to their outfield is going to be completely different if you acknowledge that Springer will move probably to right field instead of being in center. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's something that I expected. At the end of the season, you're looking at it. You've got two corner outfielders who are both on expiring contracts, and you don't necessarily have anyone in the system to replace them. And the thinking all along is that try to turn your catching depth into an outfielder or another position player with a bit of extended period of club control, contractual control, and that's essentially what they did. I think what's interesting is how they went about it, and you figure that was the area where they could balance out their lineup a little bit with left-handed hitters, and that's certainly what they did with Kevin Kiermaier and Dalton Varsho. But to me, the most interesting thing, and I had a sense that this was going to be a priority, but maybe not as heavily emphasized as it turned out to be, was the emphasis on defense.
Yeah.
Right? Like they got two of the better defensive outfielders in the game. And they've taken an area that was at least, the metrics support this and some of the eye tests support this, an area that was a little bit vulnerable and have made it very, very tight. And so, they might have sacrificed a little bit on the run creation side, but they're going to, in theory, project to be significantly better from a run prevention side. And how that helps their pitching staff and how that helps the team overall, I think is going to be really the test of that's coming up in 23.
Do you think that they made this move because of the redesigned outfield and the outfield fence, or they needed this change anyway?
I think that this was happening regardless, but the new outfield fence, which is going to be asymmetrical, it's going to have it's going to jut in spots, it's going to jut out, you're going to have different angles. That certainly added a little bit of impetus to it. Like ultimately, I think you look at all the factors that are at play there. One, this team probably isn't scoring many more runs than it did last year, right? Like from an offense, it's hard to make that better. So then how are you going to really improve your clubs? You take a step back. Well, we can certainly give up less. And you kind of go into it with that mindset. Okay, so that's an obvious area of opportunity. And then you factor in that there's going to be these new shift rules in play for the 23 season where, you're going to have two infielders on the other side of the diamond. So if you want to cut off some of the advantages for left-handed hitters or extreme pull hitters, you might have to manipulate the way you play your outfield a little bit more. So I think all those factors drove the decision. But look, ultimately, if the opportunities weren't there, then they wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have made change for the sake of making change, but the opportunities lined up with all the other factors at play.
Just out of curiosity, and for those of us that aren't on the inside, decisions like this and the roster changes, is this eyeball test stuff, or is this the analytics department saying this will help us? Where do you think the mix is of decision making?
Well, it's everything, but the metrics measuring defense have certainly improved, at least from what's publicly available. And teams obviously have their own proprietary metrics too, and they'll make their own judgments that is over and above what exists from a public domain. But I think even if you just look at the eye test, like the Blue Jays were loose in the outfield, and like, look, Game 2 against the Seattle Mariners is the ultimate example of that. There's the ball that falls in front of Raimel Tapia that helps start an inning, and is it caught if somebody else is there? Maybe. If you have Kevin Kiermaier in center field. Does that blooper by JP Crawford in the seventh inning, does that fall in? Or is it played differently? Certainly maybe. And then you think about all the times where runner goes first to third, or a guy scoring from first to home on a double. And if you have slightly better outfield defense, can you prevent that? Can you save 90 feet here and there? And you save 90 feet here and there, you're probably saving another 90 feet later in that inning. And maybe that shaves off some runs and helps your pitchers get out of different spots. And then it saves outs for your pitching staff that they don't have to get, or extra outs that they don't have to get. So I think you put all those factors together and you get to the decision. And then, factored, layered in over top of that, the fact that you're going to have two players both headed for free agency. You're probably not re-signing both of them. You're trying to keep the asset alive. And that created an obvious spot for where you can turn over some players to try and get more left-handed bats into the lineup and create a bit more balance that way.
Before we got into analytics, the consensus was in a right fielder. Your right fielder should have your best arm. Mm-hmm. He can make the throw to third and cut the runner off. Is Springer capable of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, he's got enough arm. Is he going to be, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. throwing, or Teoscar Hernandez throwing? And he's got a really strong arm also. I'm not sure about that. But I think in terms of his ability to play the position, make sure that he's, stealing some hits here and there, that should be fine. And then you've got Kevin Kiermaier to his right. So might allow him to maybe play a little bit more of a concentrated area and not have to run around as much. So, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how his arm plays in right field. We saw it in spurts and it looked fine, but, again, very, very small sample size, so can't read into it. But you also think about one of the best catches that he made last year was early in the season against the Houston Astros in the ninth inning of a game, chasing a ball right down to the wall in the ninth inning, and in right field that he had made that catch as opposed to in center field. So, he's certainly going to be a dynamic presence there. And, you factor in what he gives you with the bat, that should be plenty fine.
How much easier is it to play right field than center for somebody like Springer?
Well,
and does it have an effect? In his batting because he doesn't have to expel as much energy in center field, in right field as center?
Well, that's the theory, that he doesn't have to expend as much energy, and that allows him to, essentially put less wear and tear on his body, which should translate into better performance at the plate. Look, he's also coming back from the elbow surgery, right. So he's not going to have to deal with that bone spur anymore, and the pain that he'd been fighting through as a result of that. In terms of how different is it? Well, just responsible for a smaller area, right? As a center fielder, you've got the biggest area field to play, but you're also responsible for making sure you're backing up balls to both your left and your right too. So you put a lot more miles on the odometer that way. In right field, again, he's got the foul line to right center, and that's his territory. So he's not going to be running around as much. And the theory, at least, is that less wear and tear, you should get a more productive George Springer, and ultimately we'll see how that plays out.